Hello out there, my name is Laolu Akonde, and you are on to Inside Sources. But first, here is my take for today. And I'm focusing on some obvious omissions in the president's national recognitions regarding June 12. There are certain names that are obviously omitted, and there are others that the president ought to consider for national recognition. I guess it will take a far more comprehensive and thorough process to be able to include at least a good portion of those who rendered illustrious service in the defense of June 12 and in the projection of democracy and democratic activities after the annulment of the election. But one of the most glaring omissions is the name of the former governor of Ondo State, Chief Adekunle Ajasin, who was the chairman of NADECO and the chair of Afenifere. I think leaving out his name does nobody no good. Mr. President, you must find a way to put the name of Chief Adekunle Ajasin where it belongs, among the heroes of June 12. A posthumous national honor for Chief Ajasin will be an imperative. There are other names, some of them obvious omissions, and others that you should consider those they play. So I'm just going to read out the list of some of those names so that we can be sure that no one views Adekunle Ajasin, Ayo Adebanjo, Bishop Bonigi, Lam Adeshina in Ibadan, Olisa Agbakoba, Babafemi Ojudu, Colonel Dangiwa Umar, Walter Carrington, the American ambassador, G.O.K. Ajayi. G.O.K. Ajayi was MKO's lawyer. Olu Onogorua, Clement Nwanko, Ogaga Ofowodo, Nimo Bassi, Alex Kaba. Alex Kaba was one of the earliest journalists who had to escape from NUJ offices here in Abuja and find his way to America because the Abacha goons were after him for his pro-democracy reports. Jumoke Ogunkayede, Chief Jumoke Ogunkayede was the one that was responsible for the renaming of the street that is adjacent to the Nigerian house in New York after Kudirat Abiola. It was a fierce contest, and Jumoke Ogunkayede led that effort in New York. I was there and I reported it. You could check the records. Jumoke Ogunkayede deserves to be recognized for his efforts in support of June 12 and pro-democracy efforts. Ise Isage, Professor Ise Isage, MD Yusuf, Ray Eku, Dan Agbese, Yakubu Muhammad, Ayo Okpadokun, who was the General Secretary of NADECO, Kayode Fayemi, who was the one that was coordinating Radio Kudirat abroad, General Ishola Williams, who led some of the behind-the-scene moves in the military to secure June 12, and of course, Omoyele Sowore. Omoyele Sowore's name ought to be on that list. He was the Nigerian youth leader of the Unilag Student Union. And there are several other Nigerians. And it is important, Mr. President, that you have done this, and it is a good thing to recognize some of these heroes and give them national awards. But you have to do it in a comprehensive and completely fair process. And so it is advised that you take a little bit more time to update the list so that our history will continue to inspire the young people when we give recognition to everyone that we can remember played a significant role. Whether they no longer support you now, like people like Ojudu, it is irrelevant. Whether you don't like what they do, whether government don't like what they do now, like Omoyele Sowore, it is irrelevant. They were important voices in the June 12 and the pro-democracy struggle, and they should be recognized. And there you have it. Inside Sources. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today, I'm leading the show with a conversation on the human rights situation in the country, and I have an eminent Nigerian lawyer and public intellectual who is the executive secretary of the National Human Rights Commission. I'd like to welcome to Inside Sources Chief Tony Ojukwu, SAN. My brother.
Thank you.
Good to see you here.
Good to be with you once more.
Yeah, wonderful. I want us to start from the, you are the chair of the the executive secretary. You hold the reins there. Are you concerned about some of the fears? Are you concerned about some of the fears that have been expressed about that the country's civic space is shrinking? You have quite a bit of the activists who are being investigated, prosecuted using the Cybercrime Act. You have instances where people are being arrested because they abused the governor, or somebody spoke a language that a child of an eminent person is not comfortable with. Are you, from where you sit, Chief Ojukwu, how do you observe these things?
Yeah, I mean, that argument is an unending one about are we getting better in terms of human rights, or are things getting worse?
Yeah.
And yes, from a pedestal point of view, at times it is easy to confuse things. But for me, I try to look at these issues from the past. Let's not forget our past, because yes, I know every human being wants to keep on improving the state of life.
You're as good as your last byline we say in the newsroom.
And once you cross a state of life, you forget the past. What is our history? We've had a very long period of military rule. And don't forget, during those days, even the fundamental human rights part of the Constitution was suspended.
Yeah.
So there was even no space not to talk of shrinking.
Exactly. True that. Although we fought them.
Of course. So life is one of struggle.
Yeah.
Just like what is happening now, I see it as a one of struggle. There is always that struggle between law enforcement agents and the citizens out there. It has been like that since time of history. So what I would even say that the new situation is that yes, there is the pushback for the shrinking space, which is also part of our liberty. You didn't have that in the past. Your space was shrunk and you couldn't do anything about it. But right now, there's the pushback. As much as the law enforcement agents would want you not to exercise your rights, people fight back now. The individual can get lawyers to go to court. Even the civil society, members of the society can also even make comments and say, but this is wrong, this is not right.
True.
So you can see that in history, there is always that attempt. Look at even America. Can you believe that in America today, there is that effort to even shrink the space?
I told my friends in the US, I said, you guys have to come and learn how to from Nigeria.
So for me, it's not the best, but the instrument to fight back is there, and we are utilizing it effectively. People are not keeping their mouth shut. The courts are busy. People are also exercising their right to fight back, even though that attempt to shrink the space is there. You cannot have a space where nobody tries to shrink it. But the proper thing is that as much as those who want to shrink the space are working on their own, you are also having a pushback. So I think there's equal.
like what Wole Soyinka did when he did a song that I love my country, I know go. He pushed me, I push him. But I want to follow up that. So in the position where you sit, do you try to advise, especially the law enforcement agencies, about some of the more the better conduct of this kind of stuff? Do you try to, and I'm not asking you to make any decision, but in a general sense?
Yeah, of course. Of course, we are right there monitoring. We monitor the situation. You know, we monitor the situation. You can see our human rights dashboard every month, where we try to, you know, have a summary, a glance, because in this our country we easily forget. You know, so many things happen that if you don't take record, by next week there are new challenges that make you forget what happened last week.
Yeah.
So what we do is from time to time, we issue advisories to law enforcement agents on how to, so that they don't forget, on how to comport themselves. Don't forget, we are not working in silos. We are working in a milieu, in the international community where there are certain standards we need to keep. And that is the wisdom in setting up places like Human Rights Commission.
Right. Because I think, you know, a few days ago, you actually gave a report for the dashboard in May.
Yes.
And I think you are, you know, reporting that hundreds of thousands of human rights violations. Can you speak a little bit about, you know, so what kind of violations are we talking about, and what is it that your agency gets to do to correct some of those things?
Now, you see, the dashboard.
So first of all, give us the number of, you know, of the amount of complaints in May. Like
we had about 260,000 complaints.
Human rights violations
across board, you know. And what we do is we establish you know, Human Rights Commission has office in all the 36 states.
Yeah.
And also in Abuja. So we have an observatory whose duty is to, you know, harness the violations happening in its environment, and we collate this, and then that's how we come with the dashboard every month. Now, the dashboard, at times, some violations, for instance, what happened in Mokwa, you know, you can see the number of people that died.
Right.
Every person who died, his right to life has been violated. And at times people wonder, how that is how this thing happens. Now, when I see the dashboard each month, I just stop for 1 minute and think, does it mean that the situation is getting worse, or what is this saying?
Or people are becoming more aware of it.
Exactly. You know, don't forget, these things have been happening in the past, but nobody puts the figures together.
Yeah.
That is the point.
Exactly. Which is the reason why we shouldn't necessarily panic about
exactly.
But we should be
do something.
Yeah.
So it's a clarion call to those who have to play one role or the other. That look, don't go to sleep. You know, there's work to do.
There's work to do.
There's work to do.
And I'm happy that you pointed to the fact that even the victims of the flood in a place like Mokwa, they have lost their right to life.
Yeah.
What about the people in Benue and Plateau? You know, of course, the governor has come out to say, and I've been trying to call attention of the government that, look, you have a governor coming out to say that this is genocide. If we don't deal with it within our system, within our country, the ICC is open. And one of the things that we try to do, I mean, when we are in government, is to try to sort this problem so that if anybody takes it to ICC, we can say we are dealing with it. What are we doing, Executive Secretary, about the killings in Benue, the killings in Plateau? You know,
honestly, my brother, I don't know where to put the blame, but one thing is very clear: we need to work harder to deal with that situation, because we have not been able to deal with it.
Too many killings.
And the danger there is, if things go on like this, probably the ICC will come in.
Yeah, that's my fear too.
And when a governor has come out to say something like this, I think that also makes it important to have strong institutions, you know, like National Human Rights Commission, which is our own institution. The National Human Rights Commission should be empowered, for instance, to go and do the investigations. So when we do the investigations ourselves, we shut out ICC. But what kind of funds does the Human Rights Commission have to dabble into that situation now? We don't have the money.
But can you also recommend to government that, look, I mean, this kind of situation, if we don't deal with it, look at what might happen with ICC. Do you also have that kind of a mandate?
Yeah, of course, we can recommend to government, you know, to deal with the situation. But if the government also asks us to go and do this, government also can ask us. Human rights. You remember during Jonathan's time, during Bama, I think it was Bama incident or something like that. President Jonathan said they want Human Rights Commission to go and investigate. In that case, the money comes out.
Yeah.
Because the presidential directive.
There's a funding that.
However, if the Human Rights Commission decides to investigate that, is either it has the budget or it will go looking for.
I mean, talking about investigations, I know that, under your leadership, there have been quite a few of those, we know that about the Reuters investigations, when they said that there's a number of abortions taking place, around the insurgency in that place. And also, I know that when we were also in the villa, in the presidency, you played an active role in some of the investigations in NSAS. Yeah. Do you want to talk to us about, some of the things that you were able to achieve, such as compensation and stuff like that, in some of these investigations?
Exactly. You remember very well about the NSAS protest and the investigation by the National Human Rights Commission, which stemmed the tempo of things. And also, at the end of those investigations, the SARS investigations, what was achieved was that at least SARS was disbanded. Yeah. And then some officers who played certain roles were recommended for, categories of punishment, which we have passed on to Police Service Commission and the IGP for them to take action. And we also recommended that some people should be prosecuted and so on. And so we don't prosecute, but the law says we recommend to the Attorney General to deal with that. And then there were some that were supposed to be compensated for the violations. The National Human Rights Commission was able to source about almost 500 million. And for the first time in this country, compensation was paid to people whose rights were violated at that scale. Then there was also the case of Reuters allegation against the Nigerian military for about 10,000 abortions, abuse of women, gender-based violence, and so on and so forth. And we initially, the military did not want to investigate. They dismissed it. They said, nonsense, we're not going to do anything. But I had discussions with them, and we said the Human Rights Commission will investigate this because I knew there was danger lurking in the corners for the country.
If it wasn't done.
If it wasn't done, I knew that was a trap to deal with Nigeria. And I said this wasn't going to happen under my watch. So we decided to investigate that, because if we didn't investigate the Reuters allegation, ICC would have come in. Yeah. You remember? Yeah. The allegations about insurgency that Reuters, the ICC have been investigating has lasted more than 12 to 13 years. Oh, wow. And Nigeria has not finished with it. So I saw that coming, another vista, and that would have been good for this country. No, so we decided to boldly, and that was one of the boldest investigations we have ever carried out.
What's the outcome of your investigation?
The outcome is that there was nothing like that by the Nigerian military. The Nigerian military is a very professional force.
I'm sure they will be happy with you now that you did it, because they had enough time before.
I hope they did. I hope they are. Because why would Nigerian military leave their military operations and go and be committing abortion? That doesn't sound, And then there was the issue of sexual and gender-based violence against women. We also showed that, in fact, they were rather helping women, and each time there were, people were kind of recovered, they tried to make sure that women were put aside in a secure place and given medical attention and so on, and even the children, So no such thing happened. And do you know what? Since we released our report, Reuters has not uttered a word.
Oh, wow.
So in the first place, we invited them several times. They refused to come. And we say, in our law, if you make an allegation, you must be able to come to prove it. They refused to come. But anyway, we have given them the chance to come. They didn't come.
Whatever it is, even if Reuters don't agree, they had an obligation
to also publish our report on their report.
Yes, and say that this is what we said.
That's the challenge for them.
Even if they don't agree. Yeah. So it's poor editorial judgment on the part of Reuters, and it's better to call them out because being an international agency, at times you have this tendency to want to talk down, on us as a people. So it's poor reflection on Reuters that you have not reported the report of the investigations.
And we use the report as well to correct a few things. For instance, there's need for constant training of the military. There's need for each time there are operations, if there are collateral damage, there must be effort made to deal with that.
Yeah.
If some communities have been affected adversely in one way or the other, they should also be rebuilt. There's one particular community called Disarray, where we noticed that, the way the operations were conducted were not really very commendable. We also called them out that this is our country, this is our brothers and sisters. We called them out that they should go there and remedy the situation. And it wasn't part of Reuters allegations.
But that's what you found out.
That's what we found out on ground. So we came out to say so.
Fantastic. So was there any redress?
Well, I think the military studied it, and I believe that they will
study that. Okay, because of our time, final question. The president, did something good over a few days ago in his June 12th Democracy Day speech when he recognized, a number of Nigerians who struggled and played significant roles. Do you think that this was comprehensive, in your own view?
Well, this country is big. It's so big. But I must really congratulate the president for this initiative. It has really shown that he is really a product of democratic struggles. It takes somebody like him
to be able to do
what
this.
happened.
Yeah.
And I must single out the
Although
case
we have to give President Buhari credit also for at least saying that, MK Abiola should get the DCF.
Exactly.
Before we now find out that he did.
But my problem with Buhari's recognition is, he recognized that, yes, there was a free and fair election.
Yeah.
That MKO and Kingibe won the election.
Yes.
Then he pretended as if the election was conducted by spirits. The elections were conducted by human beings.
Yes.
In fact, Professor Wosu, it is on record. In the first place, that the Nigerian Security and Defense Council had called off that election.
True, I remember.
It was Humphrey Wosu and Buhari Bello, who was the director legal then, that went to the council and convinced Babangida and his team to go on with the election.
That's true.
If there was no election, there would have been no Abiola winning, there would have been no free and fair election. So
this is very important point. The president has now, President Tinubu has now
remedied that by recognizing the effort paid.
Do you think there are any other people that your own view?
Yeah, people like Buhari Bello, who even, look, we found that...
Who is a civil servant?
He's a civil servant. Buhari Bello took that annulment to court. He filed an action in court on behalf of the commission. That was a very brave thing to do. The affidavit by the commission was drafted, but was sworn to by me.
Oh, wow. Okay, you were in...
I was in the National Commission then.
You are in the legal department.
Legal department. So these are some bold roles which we shouldn't take for granted.
Well, it's good that, you speak out so that people will know exactly what happened. I think in Babangida's book, I think he had referred to that to that court case. I don't remember whether he mentioned the name. But it's important that Nigerians tell the story.
Exactly.
So tell us what happened. How did they happen? As final question as we wrap up. Tell us that story.
In fact, what happened was on Thursday,
and this will be June 10.
Yeah, June 10. Justice Meme,
June 10. Yeah,
we're in her court up to about 9:30 in the night when he made
the ruling.
Made the ruling in favor of Association of Better Nigeria, ABN. And by then all the officers of the commission had gone to the states. The national commissioners were no longer in Abuja. Ahead of the election on Saturday. It was only Humphrey Wosu who was still in Abuja with Buhari Bello and myself. So the next day, the National Defense and Security Council was having the last meeting.
Which was now June 11.
Which was June 11. And
Friday.
And they didn't invite Humphrey Wosu to that meeting. Surprisingly, Humphrey Wosu learned about the meeting and broke into the meeting. In fact, the security at the Villa Gate allowed him because he was a familiar face.
He was normally coming.
That was how he got into that meeting with Buhari Bello. But then the Attorney General had told them, Bambo had told them that they shouldn't worry, that nothing was going to happen. Just to divert them.
Yeah.
But when they got into the meeting, luckily, Babangida was able to give Humphrey opportunity to speak to them. Humphrey told them, look, Your Excellency, already all the material, because what they did was to postpone the election a little bit.
Right.
He said this wasn't going to be the right solution. All the sensitive electoral materials had already gone to the states. And what was the guarantee that they would still be, safe? The ballot papers were already in the central bank of all the states.
Yeah.
And that international community was already here. Monitors, international monitor observers were already in the country. So somehow he convinced Babangida and Bio. He says, okay, gentlemen, I think we should go on with this election.
Where were you then?
I was in the office waiting for them to come back.
Okay.
So when they came back and said, look, the president has agreed that for us to go, we are just jubilated. So the election went on seamlessly.
Of course.
Now,
so when did you now go to court?
Immediately after.
Okay.
Immediately after, we had to go to vacate the orders
of
while we're in court, then...
Was that on Monday? Or
that was about a week later.
Okay.
While we're in court, then they now brought the decree, which now annulled the election. So we went back to court to challenge the annulment. These are monumental efforts by public servants.
Absolutely.
People paint civil servants black in this country, and I don't think it is fair. This was a very gallant effort in a military regime by civil servants to defend democracy.
Yeah.
Such kind of gallant effort should not be wished in.
I agree with you. And where is that Buhari Bello today?
Buhari is in Abuja here.
Okay.
He was the chairman of Federal Road Safety Commission, but since the commission was dissolved, he's now in his private practice.
Okay, interesting. Thank you for telling us that story. And, it's good that you put it out there. And thank you for the work that you do in National Human Rights Commission. We hope you will have the strength and the courage and the support, to do what it is that a commission is supposed to do, which you have been doing, but to keep on doing it. As the agent of human rights inside government. And I note, some of the very great achievements, payment of 500 million naira, isn't a very small thing. And I think it's the first time that happened in the country.
Exactly.
So thank you so much for your contribution to national development.
Thank you.
Chief Ojukwu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and thank you for coming to Inside Sources.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. That's a segment. We will now go to a second segment where we're going to be talking in more details with the panel on the president's speech. Don't miss it. Welcome back to Inside Sources. We want to have a discussion on the president's speech on June 12th, Democracy Day, and of course, continue our conversation on his 2-year in office. To join me today in that important discussion, I have a group of notable Nigerian public intellectuals, both at home and abroad. Let's start from New York, where we have Professor Mojuba Olufunke Okome, a professor of political science and women's studies at Brooklyn College of the City University of New York. Prof, good to see you again.
Well, good New York morning to you.
Thank you. And here in the studio, on my far left, we have Malam Baba Yusuf, a strategist, policy advisor, also a public intellectual, and the group CEO of Global Investment and Trade Company. Malam Baba Yusuf, welcome back to Inside Sources.
It's good to be here again, Prof.
All right. And finally, by no means the least, a notable public intellectual, Dr. Emeka Jinkoye, public budgeting expert and management consultant. Dr. Emeka, welcome back to Inside Sources.
Thank you very, very much for having me back here.
All right. So let's just start from Prof, all the way from New York. What do you think is the most compelling message in the speech that the president read on June 12th, a few days ago, in your view?
Good Lord. So I want to take the speech in its totality. It's a political speech, and no politician is going to rain on his own parade and give a bad assessment of his or her record. So the president did that. That's what I found the most compelling, because, history gives us facts, and attempts to rewrite the history in a way that favors the narrative that the president wants to paint, that's what he is expected to do as a politician. But I am not a politician. and I have studied Nigerian democracy, and I know the president's record. I dare say that democracy is missing in Nigeria right now, because what democracy entails is that there is firm adherence to the principles and values, and then that when citizens are consulted comprehensively, they agree that they are experiencing democracy. I don't think you'll have the latter in Nigeria right now. There are also, people who want to see dividends of democracy, and they want to see it in material terms. I also think that is missing in Nigeria. And, don't trust me, there are indexes that measure democracy. One of the most respected is Freedom House's assessment. If you go and look at it, Nigeria is not doing well. And then the president references President Buhari. If you also go to Freedom House's index, it does not, Nigeria doesn't look good there too. So we are striving to achieve democracy in Nigeria. We're not there yet. And the president has to step up his game if he's really serious about democracy. And then if he's serious about the material benefits that Nigerians should derive from having a democratic country. One of them is security. Where is security in Nigeria? Another is that people should be able to put food on the table. It is really difficult for most Nigerians to do that. And it is increasingly difficult. And no amount of, nice words can take this away. So I would like a little bit of honesty as we look at this. I find the president's, speech to be really confusing.
Okay, very, very, very interesting one. Let's take it to Madam Baba here. Just opening statement in terms of what aspect of the speech, or how do you generally describe the president's speech?
Thank you very much, Prof. It was a very relaxed speech for a president that is leading at this trying time that we are facing in Nigeria, of course, including the global socio-economic headwinds. And of course, it is happening like that because, as far as I'm concerned, any political leader in this kind of society would behave that way because he is strolling around without any constructive, solid opposition force that is putting his feet to fire. We don't have a consolidated, and even where they are not, concerted and seriously engaging opposition figures or opposition parties to put the ruling party, in check, as the case is in every other democracy. What we have now is at a stage where you have disjointed voices and disjointed ideologies running around trying to get their act together rather than facing the critical issues that are facing Nigeria vis-a-vis the leadership of the country and leadership as subnationals. Let's not forget that we also have leaders as subnationals that are supposed to be crucially also, eyeballed at this point in time. So you see a very passive, laid-back speech at a point in time like, I call it a secondary school classroom tutorial by Mr. President to everybody at a parliament where you have quote-unquote opposition figures sitting there. He's so confident that he can talk like that to them because there is nothing they have to offer. They have already, been cocooned into, the ruling party, whether directly or indirectly, whether in action or in silence. The last one was the declaration of state of emergency in Rivers, and where we see the opposition, we didn't see any serious opposition figure, apart from one or two that stood against it. Others deliberately refused to come because they don't want to take that position that will make them look bad. But that being said, he has given his declaration. And for us, we have already done a midterm assessment, like Prof from New York was saying. It's not even, for me, it's not even about the Freedom House Index. The crucial index is what the people of Nigeria feel and see and say on the streets of Nigeria, north, south, east, west, in terms of insecurity, in terms of cost of living, in terms of freedom of all tenets of freedom.
So I still want us to talk about that speech and a few things, but I wanted to bring Dr. Emeka Ejinkoye, who actually I brought in because I wanted his insight, being a public budgeting expert, to the issue that has been raised both by Professor Okome and Madam Baba. Professor Okome talked about the Freedom Houses Index, and Baba reduced it to what what that also means in return. Baba said that it is about what the people feel. Yes. I want to ask you, you are a public budgeting expert. Why is it that we hear all these big amounts of money and promises every time from the government, both state and federal, but the people don't feel it, which is the point that Baba made? Before we go back, I wanted you to make an insertion there.
Okay, thank you very much. You see, well, for me, the straight answer is that those who we have put in charge of managing this humongous amount of money and resources do not really, or is it deliberate, or is it, I don't know how to describe it, do not understand that they are there to actually serve a group of people. You don't see this sense of empathy. There is no sincerity of purpose to actually alleviate or eradicate poverty amongst the people. If you, taking a cue from the prof in New York, take a totality of the destiny, you say, did you see what percentage of that speech was given to the suffering of Nigerians on the street? For me, it was a very elitist speech that was looking at more of the political class, the ruling elite. There was not much emphasis on Nigerian people as the suffering Nigerians. Like in Lagos, with that popular term, Ebim Power, there has been I have not seen any conscious effort to say, I don't want to hear this on the streets of Nigeria. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you are conscious of what the people are feeling, the feeling of your people, the tone of the speech, the direction would have been different for me, So because for me, I don't know. It's so disheartening. It's so painful to feel that the group of people we have delegated our sovereignty to improve the quality of our livelihood, have generally decided to use this sovereignty to actually press us down to abject poverty. That is what I see, and it pains my heart.
Actually, I wanted that feel, about the president's speech, and so I'll take it back to Professor Olufunke Okome in New York. So, Dr. Baba said that the president took he was audacious enough to say quite a few things that, people in the opposition wouldn't find funny, but because, of their own seeming, lackadaisical attitude to the work of opposition, maybe some of them don't even mind. So I wanted to ask you, Prof, do you think that the president's tone and language, do you think, even though he said that he doesn't support one-party state, do you approve of him, speaking such as saying that, well, look, I'm enjoying your disarray. I'm enjoying the fact that you guys are in disarray. I'm not going to have to do anything about it. I just want to get your take, Prof, on that aspect of his narrative. Is he the father of the nation who should then encourage everybody and say, even though you are my opponent, I can pat you on the back? And then, I also wanted you to talk about what Senator Seriake Dickson said. Senator Seriake Dickson is the senator from Bayelsa, former governor, and he said he expected the president to use the Democracy Day speech to end the state of emergency in Rivers, which took away the powers of the governor and the state assembly. Prof, and then we come back to the studio.
Thank you very much. I agree with the other two panelists, the gentlemen, that, You know, democracy means nothing if it is not felt by the people. And also in terms of governance, that the people under democracy are supposed to be sovereign and they have elected people to represent them. Now, this father of the nation thing, I really don't buy into. Let's forget about it. The fathers can father their own homes. The president is given the responsibility of being a leader that is capable of governing a country. And our constitution gives him his marching orders in terms of do's and don'ts. And then there are expectations by people who put him there to do the work of the country in the best possible way. And we look at this disarray. I mean, I'm sorry, I think that Freedom House doesn't have any stake in Nigeria. So when they do their indexes, they are kind of presenting what they have gathered information about. I respect also the person on the ground who is doing all this consultation with the people. And I dare say, a government that cares about democracy would actually take this very seriously for itself, and do likewise. But that is not done. And then the president comes. He references President Buhari and says that President Buhari did something for democracy because he declared Democracy Day. I thank the President Buhari for making Democracy Day a reality. But President Buhari's record on democracy is not good either. So this is not a foundation. And then when the president was coming, he told us Emilokon kind of politics, this is my tongue, is not actually democratic. And he has pushed his weight around. The opposition is muzzled. People are crossing carpet every day. And then he's telling us, then he's he says some things and then he's mocking the opposition for being in disarray. I think it is not only disingenuous, it is the continuation of the Emilokon kind of thing. It is my turn and I will do this any way I want. I want to remind Nigerians, because democracy is not just about politicians and their desires. Nigerian people are also missing in action. So democracy is a relationship between the people and the government. Where are the people? Where are the demands that they're making? This whole thing about father and appealing to the father is not how democracy is done. The people's will through their pressure groups, through the NGOs that claim to be concerned about democracy, through even civil society in all its manifestations, is really a missing factor here. Because Nigerian democracy is mixed up with authoritarianism. And you see that in all the indexes. We're still not out of the woods yet when it comes to authoritarian manifestations that are put into our democracy. And then the profligacy of the people in power, both the president and the National Assembly, I'm keeping it at the federal level now, it is abysmal. And it is to be condemned when ordinary people are not able to afford to even have their 3 square meals and have good hospitals. These people in power would go abroad, come to places like America, France, and wherever to get medical treatment. And Nigerian hospitals are like places where people go to suffer and to die. Our schools, our public schools, are they shining lights that we want to hold up as examples of anything? And yet, I went to public school in Nigeria, and I went to University of Ibadan, and I got a good education. But we are reversing, and then we are glorifying this and presenting it as we are making progress. I think it needs to stop. We need to stop deceiving ourselves. We are actually in a competitive world where, whether we deceive ourselves or not, the world is going. And then you see young people who see Nigeria as not the place to be if they want to get ahead in their lives. And all of them are eager to leave if they have an opportunity. So what are we glorifying? The amount of money that the president spends when he goes for his medical treatment. Is it his money or the country's money? Nigerians need to demand accountability and transparency are parts of democracy. I talked about democratic values in a global way, but we are not seeing the manifestation of respect for democratic values. Even freedom of speech is limited in Nigeria. The right to protest is limited. A lot of the things that the president himself enjoyed and spoke out about when he said he was a pro-democracy person, he's now disinclined to respect.
Okay, Prof. You know, your points are well made. You're right. The schools are terrible and the hospitals are a rot. But we'll come to that later. Baba, you know, what's your take on, you know, I mean, Prof put it quite, you know, very graphically that, you know, the president is mocking the opposition. Now, does the president have any moral obligation not to mock the opposition?
Like I said in my opening remarks, the president was having his way because in every situation, not just this political situation, when there is no counterbalance, when there is no control, then those check and balances, absolute power corrupts absolutely. In the body language and the position and the disposition of Mr. President is a corporate culture in Nigerian politics. Let me keep it with Nigeria. And if you take it further, contextualize with African politics. They are always like that because there is no proper pushback, like Professor Okome said, either from the people or from those that have been voted, quote and unquote, voted to protect the interest of the people. I see the comment by Mr. President, even though it is like a mockery, as a political speech. I mean, a political speak, gone a bit too far on the borderline of statesmanship. Because with profound respect, I may have not said that. But like I said, the opposition opened that gate. And the problem with that kind of situation, especially build up to the political time, you know, Tinubu being what he is seizing every opportunity to ridicule the opposition. And that is where I keep on hammering on. You see, I forgot, and during the course of discussion, I will go and quote for us what Rohini Lilikali, you know that my famous quote, said about co-creation of governance and democracy. Now, if you bring it back, would it have happened in a democracy where you have a parliament and you have hard-nosed, firebrand, practical, pragmatic opposition figures sitting there? Would it have happened if you have political colossuses like Atiku and Peter Obi and others that are in the political space and that are so assertive and so organized and consolidated? I don't think that will happen. So it is, for me, I see it from the cup of half full, as cup half full, that it is a wake-up call to Nigerians and to the political class, albeit the opposition parties, to say these are signs of days to come. That absolute power will continue to corrupt us, so not just President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, but whoever has that opportunity.
That kind of powers.
That kind of powers. 2 years into midterm in other countries, you know what midterm means in UK. You know what midterm is. Everybody that is, you see what is happening in UK. The Labour Party is having a good flogging around the constituencies. It's a referendum time. And the ruling party, however good they are diplomatic in their conversations, are trying to win more people's attention, give more respect to people, because they know that it is halfway and there will be consequences for actions such as the one Mr. President has displayed. But he's displaying it because he is a reflection of a society. Professor Okome, Professor Laolu, and Doc. is a reflection of our society. And I agree with Professor Okome to that extent that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not leading in vacuum with profound respect. He's leading over 200 million people, whereas the elites of that society, the middle class, have seriously failed the people. The average man on the street can barely feed. Professor Okome is not even 3 times a day. It's 1 square, just 1 meal a day, with over 130 multidimensionally poor Nigerians, reflecting over 60% of Nigerians. And to talk about what Dr. said about the gap between the bureaucrats and the politics, there's no gap, there's collaboration. We, the elites, the PAMSECs, the directors, the ministers, right, are the ones that actually teach the political class how to plunder the resources. And that is why there's an unholy alliance and unholy silence. Now, I don't want to overflow Mr. President's speech. In fairness to him, he has done what he has done because the space is there. To learn to the issue of education and health. And that is why we must expand our conversations as elites. We must be very practical about these conversations. Otherwise, we will be having what I call classroom conversation. The subnationals, if you look at the federal allocation, the state and the local government takes about close to 65% of the allocation, monthly, month on month. While the federal government, I think, takes around 45 or whatever. I may be right or wrong. But the chunk of the allocation, whatever it is, the chunk of it goes to the subnationals. And I agree with you. On the concurrent list is education and the health. Some of us went to school, like Professor Okome said, getting free education, quality education, right? But we have today governors that will take the education money. I'm from Kano State. And I see our children, primary school education, secondary school education, junior and senior secondary school are the sole responsibility of the governors. And that is the foundation of education in Nigeria. And for tertiary education, there is a counterpart provision by federal government with TED Fund, which we know provides that intervention. The states practically do nothing. Remember, my state, Kano State, Katsina State, Bauchi State, and I think Kebbi State completely stopped education during the whole month of Ramadan. These are predominantly Muslim states in northern Nigeria, and the governors went to sleep. Before Salah, this Eid Adha, they closed school for 10 days. And over almost 40 million young Nigerians from North Nigeria are out of school. So if we expand that conversation, we'll be able to, place this focus on the key areas, including, the interventions on the health, which I agree. Of course, the federal government has a core role to play. But you see, part of the problem is if we don't dimension these issues and address them and take people head on, these guys will continue playing what I call yo-yo to us. The state governments will point at the president and say it's his fault. The president will point at them, just like what happened at the Democracy Day address. And that is why you and I and Prof and the elites, those that decide they don't want to be in cahoots with the political class, should start having those line of conversation. And for those that are in opposition party, to smell the coffee and wake up.
Well, because of our time, the last question to Dr. Emeka Ojinkoye. So how do you summarize the 2 years of the president, just to conclude our conversation, in your view?
In summary, I'm seeing a presidency and a lead group that is aloof, that doesn't seem to realize what is happening to our country. I'm seeing, my perception is a group of people who believe Nigerians will always adjust, nothing will happen. So let's continue to take them for granted. That's the way I'm looking at it. And going to Rivers, the issue you talked about, Rivers. The question I asked, somebody who was expecting the president to say he wants to leave the suspension, did the president do that thing mistakenly? It was a deliberate act. Has he achieved his objective? How can you be I didn't expect him to lift it. There's an objective. There's something they are looking for that made them impose that decision. They have not gotten it. So you don't come and you start lamenting. We have to be very factual about these things. So for me, I didn't expect the president to lift it. Going to the what did I see? I'm still seeing a group of people who believe in weaponizing poverty, who believe that, look, I just want power. Let the poor be there. There must be poor. I must be up there. I must be the Baba. They must call Rankadede and all that. It's unfortunate. That is our lot. Rather than, look, this my brother is poor. I have to be able to. I have to
lift him up.
Let me lift him up, him or her up, and for a better life. Because if you don't have that mental state of mind, it will be very difficult. And what I'm seeing in our elite, political elite, is that these are a group of people who are just there to serve their own interest. They are not interested in what happens to the people around them. And for me, it's so unfortunate to say, I think Mr. President enjoys the fact that when he goes to his house in Bodilon, he sees that group of people around his fence that beg for whatever handout they get. Because if I see him as somebody that has empathy, I'm sorry to say, he would have found a way to say, look, these people should not be here. We should find something to do. Rather than giving them fish, let me teach them to fish so that they can, So as long as I see that he revels in this thing of ostentation and this thing, I am not even going forward with what I heard from the National Assembly. I am very, very pessimistic that anything good, even though for me, the opposition, President Tinubu he has a straightforward this thing to 2027.
Thank you so much for coming, Professor Mujubaola Olufunke Okome from New York, Malam Baba Yusuf, strategist, political advisor, and Dr. Emeka Ejinkoye. Thank you for coming to Inside Sources. And there you have it, another edition of Inside Sources. Like we always say, Nigeria will prevail. It means that Nigeria will win because we will keep at the issues, and we know that we will get that good break. My name is Laolu Akonde. Thank you for watching. I'll see you by the grace of God at the next edition.